Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Welcome back. We're going to finish off chapter 7 here today. I am not prepared at all because I have other duties to attend to, including other religious duties. So we're going to try and do this quickly and nicely. Today we're doing the last 4 verses in chapter 7, the Bhagavad Gita. And once again, we will read all the verses literally first from H.D. Goswami and then go into the bit by bits with Prabhupada. But first, let us glorify the great glories of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and invoke the Lord into our presence. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chapter 7, verse 27 through 30. Bharat, O scorcher of foes, due to the bewilderment of duality arising from desire and hate, all beings enter illusion at birth. But those of pious deeds, whose misdeeds have ceased, who are freed from such bewilderment, worship me with firm vows. Depending on me, those who strive for release from old age and death understand Brahman entire, higher self and action complete. With awareness linked in yoga, those who know me as the higher principle of divinity, nature, and sacrifice know me even at the time of passing. That's it. So those are the verses we're going over today. Quick to note, which I did mark with my voice, there are 3 words in italics here: entire, complete, and yoga. So I think H.D. Goswami put yoga in italics the same reason Prabhupada did, because this is a technical Sanskrit term, and we're not translating something into English. We're using it as it is in Sanskrit. But entire and complete are English words, and they are also italicized. And that's in verse 28. Verse 29. I'm confused by how it's numbered here a lot. I like when the number starts the verse. That's how I think most Bibles do it. But anyway, we'll see if we can figure out once we do Prabhupada's Gita here why entire and complete are emphasized or italicized. Here's verse 27. O scion of Bharat, Arjuna, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate. Very similar to what H.D. Goswami translated. Pretty small purport here too. This is somewhat of a review verse, although it's a bit strong though, because it says born into delusion. That seems pretty strong. And at birth, we are already overcome by desire and hate. That's hard to believe, right? Little 1-minute-old baby overcome. Then again, it's quite easy to believe. Look at babies. They're just screaming and, in pain and agony. I hate this. Why am I here? I love how the purport starts. The real constitutional position of the living entity is that of subordination to the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. When one is deluded into separation from this pure knowledge, he becomes controlled by illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The illusory energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate. Due to desire and hate, the ignorant person wants to become one with the Supreme Lord and envies Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, I'm trying to go back over what I just read because there's a lot there. So real knowledge means knowing your subordinate. Illusory knowledge means separation from pure knowledge, not separation exactly from Krishna, although then again, that kind of is what's happening because Krishna is pure knowledge. But when you are separated from the fact that you are in fact subordinate to the Supreme Lord, well, then you are the Lord, right? Why not? The only other person you could see who is not the Lord is going to be someone who has some material authority over you, some governor, policeman, teacher, whatever. And that's why a lot of my students who are born into very rich families, they don't have a Lord. Their parents aren't the Lord over them. There's no one, they just don't have a Lord. So they just start thinking, I'm the Lord. And they don't have religion either. So, this is what happens. And Prabhupada mentions how those deluded people think Krishna is created by material energies. And another part of this duality is thinking this is my wife, my house, I'm the master, I'm the husband, and these are all delusion. Those who are so deluded by dualities are completely foolish and cannot understand Krishna. Yep, it all begins with Raja Vidya. On to 28. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, and who are freed from the duality of delusion, engage themselves in my service with determination. So the previous verse was all about who is, completely foolish, completely deluded. And this verse is, well, who is actually eligible to be elevated to the transcendental position? And if you're, once again, if you're sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it's very difficult to transcend duality of desire and hate. Only this select lucky few can get through that. And this elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees who can deliver one from delusion. He must render service to the devotees. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Yes, that's a really subtle offense that an impersonalist is doing by thinking, oh, we're all one, God is one, yada yada. There's a subtle offense and indecency and disrespect there. because you're not God. You may have Satchit Ananda Vigraha in your most subtle nature, but you're not God. It's just so obvious how the life is set up, how we're just, there are men who are taller than me, stronger than me. If I can see one instance of one being a little bit superior to me in one way, then how can I be God? I may be part of God. That's okay. You're allowed to think that because it's true. And that part and parcel of God that I am is obviously subordinate to God. It's actually so obvious now. It's hard to explain it to someone who can't see the obvious part of it. And so Prabhupada stresses again at the end of the purport, one must be reinstated in his own constitutional position. Okay, on to 29. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities. So there's the word entirely, but is two times H.D. Goswami said entirely and completely. So let's read Prabhupada's word for word translation. Old age, death, for the purpose of liberation unto me, taking shelter of, endeavor all those, such persons. Brahman, actually that, they know everything, transcendental, fruitive activities, also entirely. Kirtsnam means everything, Akilam means entirely. Yep, so these are two different Sanskrit words, everything and entirely. Kirtsnam and Akilam are different words. So it seems Krishna is stressing something by using two synonyms with two very different words there. So I think Krishna is saying these persons know everything about Brahman, meaning everything transcendental, but also they know the entirety of karma as well. And how, of course, because how else can you transcend duality if you don't know both poles of the duality? So I think it's exactly that simple and to me obvious that this is the cleanest way to transcend duality when you simply see that, this is one thing on one side, this is one thing on the other. And if we can look at both at the same time and differently and see everything about both, then it's easy to then it's so easy and natural to not get caught up in it. If you only know one and you don't know the other, or if you're only in desire of one but not in desire of the other, you can get swindled. You can get swept away easily. I'm going to plug my laptop in. Okay. On to the purport, which is a little bit longer. 29 and 30 have about a one-page purport, a little longer than the previous two verses. Birth, death, old age, and disease affect this material body, but not the spiritual body. I am spirit. Aham Brahmasmi. One should understand that he is Brahman, spirit soul. 4 kinds of impure devotees who engage themselves in the transcendental service of the Lord achieve their respective goals, and by the grace of the Supreme Lord, when they are fully conscious, they actually enjoy spiritual association with the Supreme Lord. But those who are worshippers of demigods never reach the Supreme Lord and his supreme planet. Even the less intelligent Brahman realized persons cannot reach the supreme planet of Krishna known as Goloka Vrindavan. Only persons who perform activities in Krishna consciousness, mam ashritya, are actually entitled to be called Brahman, because they are actually endeavoring to reach the Krishna planet. Such persons have no misgivings about Krishna, and thus they are factually Brahman. Those who are engaged in worshiping the former archa of the Lord, or are engaged in meditation on the Lord simply for liberation from material bondage, also know the purports of Brahman, Adibhuta, etc., which is explained in the next chapter. Okay, and that's how that purport ends, is Prabhupada sets up where we're going for chapter 8. We're talking about, and then chapter 9 may be the most personal special devotees. But in this verse, Krishna talks about those who are Brahman, those who are quite advanced, they really seeking to transcend duality, and they do take refuge in Krishna and devotional service. But perhaps they are not quite ready to go to Goloka Vrindavan, or perhaps more accurately, they're not quite ready to have that goal wholeheartedly and with a laser-eyed focus. All right, let's do verse 30. Time check, 18 minutes, beautiful. Those who know me as the Supreme Lord, as the governing principle of the material manifestation, who know me as the one underlying all the demigods and as the one sustaining all sacrifices, can, with steadfast mind, understand and know me, even at the time of death. Oh boy, I was somewhere else. Coming back here now. Those who know me as the Supreme Lord, as the governing principle of the material manifestation, who know me as the one underlying all the demigods and as the one sustaining all sacrifices, can, with steadfast mind, understand and know me even at the time of death. I think it's in chapter 9, verse 8, where we get the famous verse about what you think about at death is where you go to in your next life. So, death is becoming an important topic here. And why does Krishna bring that up? It's because, well, death is pretty scary for most beings. And At death, maybe all you can think about is, oh, it hurts. What's going to happen? I'm scared. Um, it's the biggest moment, the biggest test of your life is death. But if you are ready, if you practice Krishna, then you can have Krishna at death. This seventh chapter particularly explains how one can become a fully Krishna conscious person. The beginning of KC is association of persons who are KC. Such association is spiritual and puts one directly in touch with the Supreme Lord, and by his grace, one can understand Krishna to be the Supreme God. At the same time, one can really understand the constitutional position of the living entity and how the living entity forgets Krishna and becomes entangled in material activities. Oh, I went somewhere else again. Sorry if anyone's here. That was a really sweet place, but still, I get drawn elsewhere. By gradual development of KC and good association, the living entity can understand that due to forgetfulness of Krishna, he has become conditioned by the laws of material nature. And this human form of life is an opportunity to regain KC, and it should be fully utilized to attain the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. Many subjects have been discussed in this chapter: the man in distress, the inquisitive man, the man in want of material necessities, knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of Paramatma, liberation from birth, death, and diseases, and worship of the Supreme Lord. However, he who is actually elevated in KC does not care for the different processes. He simply, directly engages himself in activities of Krishna consciousness and thereby factually attains his constitutional position as eternal servitor of Lord Krishna. In such a situation, he takes pleasure in hearing and glorifying the Supreme Lord in pure devotional service. He is convinced that by doing so, all his objectives will be fulfilled. This determined faith is called Drdhavrata, and it is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service. That is the verdict of all scriptures. This seventh chapter of the Gita is the substance of that conviction. The substance of the conviction. Once again, this Prabhupada titled this chapter Knowledge of the Absolute. Knowledge of the Absolute is the substance of the conviction to have determined faith. And that is simply the beginning of Bhakti Yoga, which is not, once again, this is an Acharya speaking and writing here, not me. So it's not an exaggeration. It literally is the beginning. Um, in the end, you get to, in the intermediate and advanced stages, you get to more personal relationships with Krishna. That means you're already with Krishna, and then you get a little bit more closer. Different flavors are established and played with. Next time we begin chapter 8, which is titled Attaining the Supreme. Thanks for playing. Glad I could finish this before 30 minutes. And have a good time, everyone. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Jai Shri Vaishnava. Shri Vaishnavi. See you next time.